Hey everyone, I'm back after quite a few months of not posting any videos, which is fine. This is just for fun, right? So I have been really busy. I had a lot of family stuff going on, weddings to celebrate. My husband graduated from college and we're so happy that he's done with school. And we moved. We bought a nice townhome and we are settling in. And so I told myself I want to kind of celebrate a little bit by setting aside some time to make just a fun video and try to ease myself back in. Who am I kidding? I'm not doing anything crazy with these videos, but I want to slowly get back in to making videos again. So I just recently finished an amazing book and I read it so fast. I had such a fun time with it. So I thought, what better video to get me excited about talking about book stuff again. I mean, I'm always excited to talk about book stuff, but to get invested in these videos again than to do a book review of this book I just read. So that's what we're gonna do and we'll have a good time. So let's get to it and pass more books. So today I'm going to review The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O, and we're going to talk all about it. I'm going to start by talking about the premise of this book overall, just give you an idea of what it's about, and then I'll just talk about my overall good feelings, a few things that kind of bugged me but I forgave, and then we'll probably have like a little bit of a spoiler section, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So there's timestamps in the description in case you want to jump around anywhere, and we'll get to it. So to start off, this is a YA fantasy book with a very strong romantic plotline. It's basically a romance with very heavy fantasy elements. It's very inspired by Asian culture, and I meant to research more about like which Asian culture Axie is actually from. I'm guessing Chinese. It all feels very Chinese to me. So somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's all very Chinese inspired, and it's so fun. It feels very much like a Chinese fairy tale just brought to life in a more modern fantasy retelling. So it's really, really fun. The general premise of the story is that there's a sea god who everybody worships among other gods, but the sea god is like the king of the gods, and he has been sending these awful storms that have been like hurricane level storms basically that are ruining villages, killing people. It's devastating every year. And so during the summer, when the storms kind of die down a little bit, the people sacrifice a young woman who is of marrying age to become the sea god's bride, hoping to appease him. And they do this every year. They've been doing it for about 100 years. And the hope is that if they send the right bride to him, he'll calm down and stop sending these devastating storms. This particular year, one girl is to be sacrificed, and the main character, Mina, she's kind of chasing after them because she knows that this girl is in love with her older brother and he's in love with her, and she's pretty bummed that they chose her to be sacrificed, and that's going to kind of ruin their lives. So she chases after them and ends up sacrificing herself instead. And this is in the first chapter, so it's not a spoiler. She sacrifices herself to become the sea god's bride instead so that her brother can marry this other girl. And she ends up in the spirit world looking for the sea god, trying to figure out what's going on. And she finds out that there's kind of a curse involved, and that's why he hasn't been able to be calmed or appeased by these different brides who have been sacrificed to him. So she goes on quite the journey to try to figure out how to break the sea god's curse. One of the best aspects about this book, which I think is so well hinted at by just the cover, is the world building. It's because it's inspired by this Asian culture. to me at least, I mean, obviously I don't come from Asian heritage. It just feels so fresh and exciting to explore, you know? You learn more about like dragons or spirits or how souls work. There's this like red string of fate that can tie two souls together. It's all so vivid and visually appealing in the way it's described too. Especially that red string of fate. It just is such a bold image that is so fun. I had a really fun time just being immersed in this world, falling in love with the setting, getting to know the different gods and spirits. It's just such a fun place to kind of feel like you get to explore alongside Mina, and that's probably one of the best aspects of this book. So if you really love strong world building, and especially if you love anything inspired by an Asian culture, Chinese, I believe specifically in this case, or if you just want like a really fun setting that you get to kind of explore, you might be interested in this book. Kind of on the flip side of that, one of the aspects that was a little harder to appreciate was the plot. So the plot was just not always, it's just not the strongest aspect of this book. And it sounds like the premise, right, is very interesting, where this girl kind of sacrifices herself to the sea god, has to figure out how to break his curse. There's a really interesting twist that I'll talk about later in spoilers, and that's all fun, but there's just certain points that just feel like a little lackluster. Some aspects felt a little predictable too. I'll talk a little bit more in the spoiler section about some of those things that I just predicted very easily. And I mean, there are other things that I didn't predict so easily, but some things you can kind of guess before they're gonna happen. At the climax especially, there was just a lot of like running around, like, oh, now I gotta go here and talk to this person. Oh, now I gotta go here because I know what's happening here and I gotta talk to this person. Oh, but you know what? Now I need to run to this place and talk to this person. And it just feels like, I don't know. Like, could there have been a better way to do it? It felt a little rough. And the last thing I'll complain about as far as the plot goes is the way Mina went about trying to solve like this mysterious curse and try to figure out and get to the bottom of things. And I just felt like the whole time she was asking the wrong questions and like going to the wrong places to try to find answers. And granted, I'm not from the spirit world, so who can say that I really know what's the best way to like go about trying to figure out how things work there. But it just felt like she was always asking the wrong questions. That's my white Aja coming out of me. If you get that reference, you know. But back to something really positive, I really enjoyed one of the reasons that I got so invested in this read and read it so fast, like I think it took me 3 days or so, maybe 4, and the only reason it took me like an extra day was because one day I just had a hard time finding time to read because my kids were so demanding. It's fine. But one of the reasons that I got so invested was because the relationships and the characters were easy to attach to. I was really impressed because there's quite a few side characters in this story, and sometimes they kind of come and go, but Mina really developed meaningful relationships with all of them. And so I was always interested in who she was becoming friends with, who she was getting to know, who she was trying to protect, or things like that. So that was really well done. And of course, as you know, there is a romance. The whole book is basically about this romance developing, and it's basically an enemies to lovers trope, right? And I just thought it was really well done. Okay, sorry, my memory card just filled up, so let me figure out where I was. Okay, so what I really loved about Mina coming to love her love interest was that both of them were able to so clearly see each other's strengths play out in really interesting ways. And before they ever developed feelings for each other, you could just so clearly see how much they came to respect each other because of their strengths. And I just thought that was so well executed. And again, that was one of the reasons why I was so invested in this book and wanted to keep reading. Probably the final thing that I'll say before I get to spoilers is that the pacing, like occasionally, felt a little off. with this book. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the plot, because there were moments when like something would be revealed and then suddenly it's like the next day we talked again. And it's like, why didn't you have this conversation like in the moment when this thing was revealed? Or, you know, just things like that would just occasionally happen. And it just felt like sometimes, like, could we not have used our time a little better? Like, I think at one point, so Mina really only has 1 month in the spirit world to figure out this curse thing, or else she's gonna die and become a spirit. And there was one point where, like, basically a whole week went by where she did next to nothing. And I was like, could we not have done something more with that time? I don't know. So, and again, this is kind of a small thing. Like, again, this just felt like the plot a little bit rough in places. So now let me dive into spoilers real quick. So if you don't want spoilers, skip ahead to the wrap up, my final thoughts, and spare yourself the spoilers. But if you're interested in spoilers, hang out with me for a second. We're going to talk about some things that I really loved or that really kind of bugged me, or different things. One thing that I just absolutely loved was this twist in how Mina's red string of fate, after it was like snipped and cut off from the sea god, and then she developed one with Shin. And that was just so interesting, because at that point there weren't any super strong hints that he was the sea god, because reasons. And I think early on I was like, is it possible that he could actually be the sea god somehow? And I wasn't really sure, but I just kind of, and I really pushed that thought aside for most of the book and didn't really think it could be the case. But I was very interested in just the unique dynamics and like almost kind of a love triangle that created. And just like the tension and everything with that worked out really, really well. And so again, that's one reason why Mina and Shin were just so interesting to follow and see their relationship grow. And like I said, it wasn't super obvious either that Shin was the sea god from the beginning. So I think there's also a really strong development of that reveal. And I think by the end I was like, oh, I think I see where this is going. But I kind of, like, that was the kind of reveal that it was very easy to let myself be led along and just discover it with the book more than dwelling on it and trying to figure it out. Whereas there are other things like Mask, like almost instantly I was like, that's her great grandma. Like, it was just a no-brainer. Actually, great-great-grandma, sorry, generations. And it was just so obvious from the beginning, and it became very obvious pretty quickly too that Dai was her grandfather, that Mickey was her niece. You know, it was very obvious. And I don't know how else you would have really hidden those things, but that was very predictable. I just looked down at my notes and I saw that I wrote down that I could see Mask being the great-great-grandmother from 2,000 miles away. Like, that's how obvious it was. So a couple more quick things. The one other thing that I really have a little bit of beef about is the fact that, so at the end, Shin, he is revealed to be the true sea god. He gave his soul to this emperor he loves to save his life, and he became like the temporary kind of fake sea god. And basically to fix everything, Mina was able to make a wish on the dragon's pearl to like get them back to their places. But because of that, they ended up actually losing their memories of this like 100-year period where they were like suffering and didn't like remember who they were. Anyway, so they've lost their memories of this time, which means that Shin has also lost his memories of that month he spent with Mina, falling in love with her. Anyway, he had promised to like find her after a year because she went back to the human world to be with her family and kind of like figure life out, and he has to figure out like how to be the sea god again. Anyway, after a year he's supposed to come back and find her, and he doesn't because he's forgotten about her. And like at the end, like the moon goddess comes and tells her all this and like restores their memories because she's the goddess of moon and memory and everything. And there's two friends, close friends, that Shin and Mina have, like start out as Shin's friends and Mina becomes close with them as well, Kirin and Namki. And the whole time, this whole year, because apparently somehow they keep their memories, And this whole first year, they don't tell the sea god about Mina. And they wait a whole other year where he's like, and this whole time he's like in despair, like he's heartbroken, he's grumpy, he's melancholy, and they're like, he's totally suffering because in his heart he knows that he misses Mina even though he doesn't actually remember her. And it's just like, and they just don't tell him. And like there's an excuse, like they're worried that it's gonna undo whatever this solution that turned him back into the sea god. But like they are like the most loyal, close friends, and they just don't say anything. Like I'm sure like it's very skipped over because like there's kind of a time jump and stuff, but it just felt like, could you really not have done something more? I don't know. We needed something more from those guys, I think. Like there are excuses, but I'm not happy with them. And the last thing that I'll say that it's a good thing is that I really was interested in, there's a few of the past brides of the sea god who like their sacrifice didn't work, and one of them specifically, she like, you know, after her month died and became a spirit, and she somehow has fallen in love with the god of death in this world, and is like, she's getting married to him in like the kind of beginning of this book. And I was just like, that's a cool story. Oh, I just like bit my tongue while I was saying that. That was weird. Anyway, I was like, that's a cool story. Like, I want to hear how that story went. So I feel like I need like another standalone or like some sort of sequel. I guess it would be a sequel because it'd be like the same world and many of the same characters, but I want it to be Hiyeri's story, where like, how does she fall in love with the god of death and how does he fall in love with her? Like, I'm very interested in that. So I hope I get that story someday. Very interested. Okay, we're done with spoilers. So to wrap up, I just want to say that even though this wasn't a perfect book, you've heard a few of the things that kind of bugged me. Those things were also fairly forgivable because so many other things did work so well. And I mean, I think I was also kind of in the mood for something light and easy to get lost in a little bit. So it was really enjoyable, an enjoyable reading experience. Overall, I think I'd give this book about 4 stars because yes, there were some things that were not perfect that kind of brought it down, but I did enjoy it so much that I think it does deserve a solid 4. I'm really hopeful for the future of this author. Like I think her writing style kind of vibes with me, and if she can get the right kind of developmental editor on her side to help her work out the kinks in her plot, you know, I think I will really enjoy a lot of her future books. So I really hope I see more books from her in the future. I will definitely pick up more if she publishes more. Okay, that's it. So I want to know, have you read The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea? Did you like it? Are you wanting to read it? Tell me what you think. And I've got a lot more books to get back to reading, so thanks for passing more books with me. See ya.